Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see all of you. I don't know why, but I feel quite nervous to be here, standing before you. But, well, I'll go on. First, I'll introduce myself to all of you. As you can see on this slide, my name is Junyeol Baek, and I'm working with Nicalis. I've been working with Nicalis for about 3 years. And Nicalis is a developer and publisher. And we've been taking part in this conference in this event, in this festival for over 5 years as sponsor. So I do collaborate with Korean developers a lot. I am a main contact for Korean developers. So Critadel that we published last year, or ERA that we recently released that is being exhibited in our booth today. Well, all those programs are my babies. I took part in programming them. So before moving on, I am going to tell you one thing. I hope that you can hear my voice clearly. So I would like to take my mask off just for clear voice because I have nobody around me, so please understand this. Okay, so let me begin. So the title of my presentation is Watch Out for These Pitfalls. So what are pitfalls? Well, as I told you, I've been producing for 3 years with Nicalis, and Nicalis has a long history on its own as well. So I do have a lot of experiences of cooperating with developers. And I do know that some developers do make mistakes. I learned this with my experiences, so I would like to tell you about it. And I would also like to tell you how we, Nicalis, solve these issues. So when developers are developing games, they will always face some challenges, but when you meet those challenges, you need to be able to overcome them. So that's why I'm giving you these tips and sharing my experiences. So the first thing, well, you have to think about the difficulty of your game. You should not create a vicious cycle of difficulty control. I do see a lot of games that are really difficult to play. So that is because game developers fall into a vicious cycle of difficulty control. Well, in the beginning, developers design levels. So when they are done with level 1, they will go on to the next level and the next, and on and on. Then you will play the game that you developed again and again. So from your perspective, it's easy because you played this game so many times already. And then you will even feel that, oh, this is just too easy, not fun, and you will make it even more difficult. So constant review and adjustment leads to the creation of a very difficult game. You would end up making a game that is nearly impossible to beat. That's not good for game players. And the same problem applies to game testers because testers play the game again and again, so they would not realize how difficult this game is. So you would always have to think of this when you are developing and testing a game. And another thing, sometimes your game systems may be unfair. For example, let's say that you are making a 2D platform games. Then you will develop game mechanics for main character. So for example, if this character jumps and puts his feet on this platform, he has to stand still. However, sometimes it doesn't. Then it is something that users cannot control. So you have to be aware of this kind of small, minor game mechanics. So you have to make it fair and you have to make it acceptable for users. So this is a game, The Indigenous, and the level design of this game is notorious. It is so difficult to beat. So this failed at level control, but the reason I continued to play was that the main character operation or game mechanics applied to this character was very clear and fair. It was easy to control, and I loved the feeling. So if the users feel this game is too difficult, they will just feel that this game is fair. So they will think that they can't beat the game because this game is difficult and they're not good at playing this game. And they wouldn't think that the game itself is wrong or controlling the characters unfair. So making that kind of clear and absolutely perfect system is really important. And after making this perfect game, you have to explain it clearly to users. So you have to explain users how to control the character. So users can learn and realize that this is how they should feel when they play a game and control the character. And another thing, you have to be careful not to create a sudden difficulty spikes. Well, here, look at the screen. You can see that character is in a real challenge. He has nowhere to go due to the hurdles around him, right? So if the game developer fails at developing proper game levels. So for example, if the previous game level was really easy and all of a sudden this got so difficult to play, it wouldn't be loved by gamers. So you have to be aware of this and you have to be really careful. And you have to make sure that your game's difficulty grows gradually. So that's good thing that you have to remember. And in order to make sure that you create a gradual level difficulty increase, you have to ask a lot of people and have a lot of people play the game actually and get feedback from them. That is the most important thing that you have to do as a developer. But make sure that you are approaching a diverse group of people. Some people who are not familiar with gaming, and others who love platform games, and even others who do have no interest in playing games, and on and on. So you have to approach and contact a diverse group of people and get feedback from all of them. Then you will have some fair and concrete data that can objectively evaluate your game and its difficulty levels. Then you will be able to prevent making mistakes with regard to creating a too difficult game. And one more thing, you have to create and share tutorials with users. And make sure the tutorials are really clear and helpful. If you just explain this is how to do, how to move the box, or this is where you should go to find certain options, then it's not effective. You have to make things really clear and easy to understand. You have to make it fun to read so users can pay more attention to how to play your game and they are willing to play your game. And again, don't make it too difficult to play. You can always create a hard mode, but if you want to create a hard mode, make it an option. Some users like to challenge themselves and go with hard mode, but others do not want. So if you add hard mode as an option, you can have more players. You can increase your user base. And the next slide says every detail matters. There are a lot of things that you have to consider. UI, art, system, sound, mechanics, all those are important when you develop a game. So if you put all your development time and resources into one or two of them, you will never make a successful game. I understand that your resources and time are limited, but if you put too much of your time or too many resources into one aspect, that's not good. So I want to ask you if you're considering other aspects enough. You have to ask yourself from time to time this question so that you are not focused too much on one or two particular aspects. This is an example. For example, well, you can make a game with a great visual effect or artistic images. However, if that game has poor sound quality or storyline, well, that will never make a success in the market. So you have to think about all different aspects and try to make a balance, keep balance of all these things so that you can make a good one package. So you always have to remember that there are so many elements and components to a game and every detail matters. This is a game, Crystal Crisis, released in 2019 by Nicalis. This game is based on puzzle and fight. So if you look at the image at the very left, you can tell that this was an image from a very early development phase. And if you look at the right one, you can see that that is the final version. So you can see how it improved. We added more polygon and the game background was improved dramatically, and lighting and all other elements improved in the process. In the very beginning, we only focused on the gaming function and the storyline only. So we didn't really pay a lot of attention to the artistry. But later we realized that if we focused on game mechanics and storyline only, we wouldn't make a good product. So we began from the very beginning again. We try to strike a balance by considering all different elements and components to make a good scene with all good effects and game mechanics. So we did waste a lot of time and resources because we had to start from the scratch again, but it surely worth the effort, the time and resources, because the final product got so much better. So I just wanted to tell you that you have to think about this from the beginning if you plan and develop a game. And next, about sound design. I hope that you can put a lot of time for this particular aspect because it needs a lot of time to audio mix them right into your game. And art, animation, the visual effects, code, and all other effects affect how the sounds fit into the game. So if you give 1 or 2 months for sound, that's never going to be enough. So you will use temporary sound first in the beginning of the process or design, and at the very last moment, like for 1 or 2 months, you will start to audio mix them into your game, but that's not going to work so well because you will change a lot of problems when you add new sound. So I really want to tell you that you have to have a lot of enough time for audio mixing. And you will have a lot of changes in the process as well. So for example, let's say that your game has an element like a bow. So you wanted to add some sound effect for that. And you will use a temporary sound first, and then you will update them later. Then you made a change, right? Then if you made a change, you have to list of such changes. You have to track them all the time because that is how to save your time. You would easily see what was the original sound and what was the final sound so that you will easily track your changes and make adjustment if needed. And another thing, you would do a lot of QA tests. And QA testing should focus on sounds as well. We have to admit and acknowledge that it is really hard for testers to catch missing sounds or incorrect sounds. Testers can easily identify visual errors or problems, but because sound is not something that you can see with your eye, sometimes it's easy to miss. So for example, when you have a bow in your game, there would be like 3 steps of using the bow. Like then probably the bow would have 3 sound effects. Then testers would have to divide this bow movement into 3 and think about all these 3 sound effects, but sometimes they would just lose, they would just miss that. So you have to let the testers know that they have to think about this in advance. You have to give more information to the testers so that testers would pay attention to all these details. And that's how you create a game with almost no bugs. And another thing, localization. You always have to plan ahead for future localization. Here you see Korean, English, German. For a same word, you will have different lengths in different languages. So for Korean, 범위피해 will be translated into splash in English. And if you write it in German, it will be Flächenscheiden. I don't know how to pronounce this, but anyways, it's long. It's really lengthy. So it'll affect your UI design. So here, as you can see, the upper image is in English and the image below is in German. And you can see that you don't have enough time to write down this word, so you are just scrambling the words in the paper. So that's not good. So I have to tell you that you have to think about UI first and make sure that your UI design is flexible. And I hope that you can consider using strings more instead of art, because that is easier to make adjustment. If it's just a simple text or string, you can easily change that. Programmer can simply retype the text, then that's it. But if it's an art image, you have to do the artwork with the artist, so it's going to be so much complex. So that's one thing that I wanted to tell you. Make your UI design flexible. And make a database of in-game strings. So put an ID to all strings and make a database. It will help you so much in the future. The translators and you, developers, will be able to improve your work efficiency so much if you have this database. You can see everything at a glance, and you can see a big picture really easily. And because all strings have their unique IDs, you can easily find them, change them, and add them to your game. So you always have to think about localization when you are developing a game, and be ready for that. Some of you might think that I'm never going to hit the foreign market, but I think that's not a good idea. You will have a chance to enter other markets, and if that's the case, you will have to localize your product. Then you will have to use different languages, and translation and localization takes a lot of effort. So if you want to change all that all of a sudden without making preparations in ahead, it's going to be really tough. So I hope that you can always plan ahead for that. And last but not least, do not delay your launching date so many times. If you see a lot of delays, you will be wary if you're a user. So we have to make sure that you launch your game on time. However, I understand that game development cycle can always change. Your schedule can always change. Actually, well, it changes all the time. So I think that we have to be ready. We will have a lot of challenges. We will have a lot of bugs that we have to solve. So I think that you have to announce your release date at the very end so that you do not have to delay the launching date. You don't have to set the target and announce that way before the actual launching date. And probably you can delay your launching probably 1 or 2 times, but if you do it too often, you are going to make your users and fans unhappy. So do not announce your release date too early. So basically, I shared 5 tips today based on my experiences. And I believe that if you acknowledge these issues in advance, or if you know these kind of issues are the things that you will face in the future, you will think about them and make plans so that you can save your time and resources so much later in the development process. So I hope my speech was pretty helpful for some of you, and thank you for listening. I know that this is not the end of today's event. We have 3 days more to go. So I hope that all of you can enjoy the rest of BIC, and well, I will be looking forward to meeting all of you in person later in my booth. Thank you so much.